Have you met Koko, the talking gorilla? She was super famous because she could use sign language and because she got sad when Robin Williams passed away. She was everywhere, from the news to National Geographic, and that was back when people knew what National Geographic was. Everyone was excited to share the same incredible story. Koko was a gorilla born in captivity at the San Francisco Zoo on July 4th, 1971, and became a global sensation for one incredible reason. Koko learned how to speak using sign language. Soon, the world was amazed by Koko the talking gorilla, making her famous through documentaries on practically every channel that made them at the time. That's how many celebrities, including Robin Williams, ended up meeting Koko, making her even more famous worldwide. Everyone was in awe of Dr. Francine Patterson, who had reportedly taught Koko to use over 1,000 signs and understand more than 2,000, astonishing the world when Koko seemed to invent her own signs to express herself and touching hearts with a heartbreaking message before her death. Only, there's a small problem with all of this. It's not true. None of it. It's true. Language is complicated. For example, you probably talk to your pet, just like most people do. I'm going to the store, be right back. Your pet probably understands a few words and has learned to associate them with the behavior you expect from them. I'm going to the store, I'll be right back. Dogs are particularly good at associating words with action, and there have even been dogs that have learned to use language, or at least something close to it, to communicate with their humans.
Savvy, help!
Don't be a baby.
And obviously, many animals can learn to solve various types of problems, like cats analyzing their next moves to ensure that they're perfect, or crows memorizing traffic patterns and sharing information, or even octopuses figuring out how to open jars and escape captivity. All of this indicates that animals have a pretty advanced sense of selves and of the world around them, demonstrating different kinds of intelligence. If an octopus can learn to open a jar better than a child and escape captivity at will, what else can it learn with its intelligence? Can it learn tricks? Can it learn how to speak? Can it predict the future? And going back to this button-using dog, this dog is clearly using language, but how much of it does a dog actually understand? Is the dog speaking? What's more, if animals can learn to do so many things, could we teach them how to use language? Specifically, could you train an animal to use language? Well, until recently, we didn't know, and many argue we still don't know today. A behaviorist before would say, yes, you can teach an animal to use language. This is from the school of thought that children learn to speak by making random sounds until one of those sounds is a word. When that happens, parents give the child positive reinforcement, teaching them that good things happen when they make certain specific sounds.
Puppy. Mama. Dada.
Thousands of cycles later, the child has learned an entire language. According to behaviorists, this means that a dog learning that good things happen when you say walk is essentially the same as a child learning that good things happen when they say mama. This would imply that the only difference between your dog understanding language and a human understanding language is the level of intelligence. All an animal needs to understand language would simply be a system of positive reinforcement. And if animals were just more intelligent, they could learn to use the entire language just like they learn to solve any other problem. But Noam Chomsky disagreed. He argued that certain aspects of language remain consistent across regions and cultures. Language, at its core, relies on thousands of words and a myriad of rules for using them appropriately. Chomsky believed this indicated something unique about human intelligence that enables us to learn language, and that simple positive reinforcement is not enough. You also need human intelligence if you want to speak. Obviously, one of these theories had to be correct. Either animals can be taught to use language, or language is exclusively human. And that is why, for a long time, many scientists tried to teach intelligent animals to use language. Margaret Lovett tirelessly tried to teach a dolphin to speak, but No matter how many psychedelics she used, how many rewards she offered, or how many handies she gave to the dolphin, and yes, that happened, it's not a bit, the dolphin never managed to articulate a word or even demonstrate understanding of what they were trying to teach him. The dolphin often ended sessions frustrated. The same was true when scientists tried to teach chimpanzees to speak. At best, they could barely move their lips to produce faint sounds. Eventually, we discovered that humans have a unique mechanism for producing specific sounds with specialized parts of our anatomy enabling us to articulate speech. This means that even if a chimpanzee or a dolphin could learn to understand language, they would struggle to speak it because they lack the necessary bodily parts to regulate the sounds that they produce. But if the problem is simply that they can't produce sounds, what if we teach them to communicate with signs? Not dolphins, of course, but monkeys and chimps have hands very similar to ours with nice long thumbs and nimble fingers used for similar purposes. If you can teach a monkey to use its hands to get food or to defend itself, could you teach it to use its hands to communicate? And this is what scientists wanted to explore with Koko. Aha! You almost forgot that this was what the video was about, but we finally arrived at her story. Koko was a gorilla born in captivity at the San Francisco Zoo. Wait, I said that stuff already. At that time, many scientists were looking for monkeys to teach them sign language. At just 1 year old, she was separated from her mother to receive urgent medical treatment. That's when she met Penny Patterson, a graduate student in her 20s who took care of Koko and helped her recover. Penny immediately began teaching Koko sign language. According to Penny's writings, 7 years later, Koko learned about 100 signs in her first year and had a couple of years where, just like human children, she learned at a faster rate. She even started combining words to describe things that she didn't know how to sign yet, just like a child would. For example, she combined the signs for eye and hat to talk about a mask, finger and bracelet to refer to a ring, and milk, fruit, sweet, and food to talk about yogurt. Koko didn't just talk about her surroundings, she also expressed feelings and even learned how to lie, occasionally blaming others for her own accidents. She also adopted a kitten that she loved dearly and could talk about her cat and her memories with others using sign language. She spoke of her earliest memories of meeting people and even expressed sadness when Robin Williams, whom she had previously met, passed away. By this time, Koko was already famous, and shortly before her death, she famously delivered this message to humanity. Let's see what a wise gorilla has to say to all of us in the Paris Climate Conference of 2015. Beautiful, right? A gorilla learned to speak and delivered an inspiring message to humanity. A wonderful story.
Hey, but why are there so many cuts in the video?
Oh, well, just technical editing and such. Cameras just jump like that sometimes. You wouldn't know about that.
And why isn't there a moment where Koko says more than 2 words in a row without a cut?
Well, because, you see, when you train a gorilla...
And did Koko say we were destroying the planet? How did they explain climate change and humanity's role in it to Koko?
Well, because Koko didn't know how to talk. Koko didn't know how to talk! Think about this dog again, for example. If you move or change the shape of its buttons, you would likely have to retrain him from scratch to use them correctly again. That's because the dog is not talking. The dog simply knows that pressing certain buttons triggers sounds, and after that, humans give him a reward. The dog wouldn't use those buttons to communicate with another dog because it doesn't connect the sound of a word to its meaning. And what's more, the dog would never learn to combine different words to communicate with you. Moreover, the dog would never learn to ask questions to get knowledge because it lacks the intelligence to realize that there are things that he doesn't know, because dogs cannot use language. And Koko couldn't use language either. Patterson, who trained Koko for all those years, never published substantial evidence that Koko could talk. Sure, she published descriptions of the first words that Koko learned, but those were just narratives, not rigorous studies. If Koko had genuinely been learning how to talk and not just how to press buttons. There would be evidence of Koko doing what children do with language, using signs to talk to herself, inventing conversations, or asking questions. But there's no evidence that Koko did any of this, not when she first started learning how to talk, nor at any other time in her life. And this isn't because we search for such behaviors in Koko's documentary videos, because Patterson never released a single unedited video of Koko. And I want you to just picture that for a moment. Patterson convinced the world that Koko could talk and never released a single video to prove it. The only videos that exist of her are heavily edited ones like the one you just saw. And in the few videos we have of Koko, she doesn't talk like a child learning to speak. And those are the best moments because most of her videos look like this.
How do you say love?
Oh.
For sign language. How do you say love?
Can you show him how to say love? How do you say love? What's that flower? She's asking you about your cufflink. Is that a flower?
That's a sun. And my grandfather gave me the...
Sun. It looks like a flower, though.
Does look like a flower.
Can we talk a little bit about love? Frown? Oh, honey. What? Love? Love you.
Oh, is that?
She said,
Oh.
love you, visit love.
Oh,
Well, that was very nice.
thank you, Koko.
She loves her visitor.
In all the videos, you can see how Koko is just signing almost randomly, hoping for a word from Patterson, and how Patterson rationalizes everything Koko seems to say. Patterson claimed that a relationship with the ape was necessary for the ape to talk. It wasn't just enough to give the apes someone to talk to. The apes had to form relationships with humans to want to talk to them. The problem with this is that it meant every time Koko spoke, only a handful of people who constantly acted as interpreters, especially Patterson, were involved. This obviously raises questions about all of those words that Koko supposedly combined to make other words. How many of those words were simply Koko trying random signs until two of those signs were interpreted as one word? It's the same issue as Clever Hans. Clever Hans was a horse in the beginning of the 20th century who could do math. He could add, he could subtract, he could multiply, everything. His owner was astonished. He had never trained him for that, but when he asked him what 2 plus 2 was, Hans would tap in the floor 4 times. So his owner took him on tour so people came up with simple math questions and watched astonished how Clever Hans tapped until he got to the right number. And there was no trick here. His owner wasn't pulling some sort of elaborate con. Hans was really clever, except not in the mathematical genius kind. When scientists came in to investigate, they realized that Hans couldn't answer if his owner wasn't present or if his owner didn't know the answer. What Clever Hans was doing was tapping the floor until he detected micro changes in the body language of the owner, who made them without even knowing, and stopped tapping when his owner expected him to stop. He was clever not because he could do math, but because he knew how to interpret even the tiniest clues that escaped to not just everyone around him and his owner, but even to his own owner. So how can we know that Koko wasn't just doing the exact same thing? After all, we do know Patterson misinterpreted much of what Koko said because Patterson applied spoken language rules to sign language. We see this constantly in how Patterson claimed Koko meant to say something that rhymed with the sign she used, except Koko couldn't make those kinds of rhymes because she didn't know that the words she was signing in ASL rhymed in a different language, English. Rhymes in sign language are based on signs that look similar and have a similar rhythm. Koko didn't speak English, and thus Koko couldn't have made such connections. And once you see how Patterson communicated with Koko in some of the very few videos released by them, it's very easy to see how talking to Koko and getting her to use even the most basic sign language on command was basically like pulling teeth even after a lifetime of training. There is a ton of rationalization by Patterson to connect whatever Koko is signaling to the current situation and their efforts to communicate with her. And that's from the very, very few pieces of data we have. If that was her in her best day with the benefit of editing, how much rationalization and communication was actually happening on a normal day without editing? How much was the interpreter rationalizing for Koko in the published material? This makes more sense when you realize that Koko wasn't just a gorilla. She was money and fame. She was a brand. She was Koko, the gorilla who could talk. All of those interviews and encounters happened for a reason, and people supported Koko and donated to the foundation for a reason. That's why employees had to sign confidentiality agreements preventing them from speaking about what really happened inside of the foundation. Koko needed protection. Because at this point, I should probably tell you that a Koko wasn't the only ape taught to talk and live with humans. Koko is just one of the less tragic examples. Nim Chimpsky was another ape trained to talk. Nim was adopted by a pair of researchers who raised him as their own child alongside their existing child. They dressed Nim in clothes, taught him to eat at the table, and of course, tried to teach him to talk. Nim learned signs for food, water, and going for walks, but as Nim matured, he began to exhibit more aggressive behavior. Terrence, the father conducting the experiment, decided to end it and permanently transfer Nim to the Institute of Primary Studies in Oklahoma. By this point, Nim had spent over a decade, his entire life, eating like a human, dressing like a human, and living with humans. He most likely believed he was a human. Nim had no idea how to adapt to his new environment, where he was treated like the primate he was, and not the human he had been raised to believe he was. A year later, Terrence visited Nim. Nim immediately ran to Terrence, trembling with excitement. His nightmare was over. His dad was there. Everything was going to be okay. Except none of that was true. Terrence only visited Nim that one time and never returned. Nim fell into a deep depression and was never the same again. After that, Nim was confined to a metal cage and sold with other primates for medical experiments. He was later bought by the Black Beauty Ranch when they learned he could sign. And by then, Nim had become aggressive, although he was kept in slightly better conditions, and although he had the chance to socialize with other chimps, he was semi-isolated until he died in 2000 after 15 years of neglect. The other stories of apes taught to talk are even worse, and that's all because teaching an ape to speak involves plucking them out of their natural habitat, surrounding them with humans until they themselves kinda think they're human, and then expect funding never runs out for the whole lives of those apes because they can never live a normal life again. The moment funding runs out is the moment when they go from almost human to barely lab equipment and are treated accordingly. Heck, even Clever Hans died in the war after being drafted as a military horse, very likely killed and eaten by soldiers. Imagine that, the horse who was specially good at understanding human body language, slaughtered and eaten by the same soldiers who accompanied him. We really are not good at taking care of the animals that we find special enough to humanize. And this is where most people talking about Koko in every video I ripped off end. Koko couldn't speak because animals can't speak because Noam Chomsky was right. Language is human, and trying to teach animals how to use it is not only futile, but also damaging to the animals. However, after researching this topic, I think that conclusion is wrong. Koko probably couldn't talk, but that doesn't mean apes can't talk. Kanzi, known as the smartest ape who ever lived, was never as famous as Koko, but he was definitely better at proving he could speak. He wasn't trained like the chimps before him. Instead, he acquired symbols by observation while his adoptive mother was being trained. Researchers were able to conduct independent research with double-blind testing to prevent the Clever Hans problem and even use signs with other people and with other chimps, completely unprompted. Even Nim showed more evidence of truly speaking after Project Nim. I am not sure that Noam Chomsky is fully right when he says that language is human. But what I do know is that the way we've gone around exploring it is completely backwards. If humans are so special because we do language so good, then we shouldn't be trying to force other animals to speak in a way we can understand. We should be using our superiority in language to learn how to speak in a way they can understand. Killer whales have very specific dialects, and there are some instances where they appear to communicate, share information, and even formulate plans of attack to do what we should be doing and kick billionaires out of the sea. Humpback whales have long songs with clear hierarchical structures, which are taught to younger whales and which can change, even quickly sometimes. The songs have the same repeating elements and predictable ordering that we expect to see in language, and whales can not only learn these songs, but add on to them, change them, or respond to them. And I would love to know what whales sing about. If we humans are so superior at languages, then we should be learning how to speak the language animals speak, instead of trying to teach them to speak our language under our rules. How do the killer whale dialects work? How can we make a humpback whale song to tell them about us, to communicate with them, to ask them if the Leviathan is real and what their whale ocean gate memes look like? You communicate with your pets all the time. You know humans can at least somewhat effectively communicate with them. If we want that communication to expand, we shouldn't be forcing them to do something completely unnatural to them and learn how to speak our language. We should be using our superior language-spoken brain to learn theirs.